is he growing up?
Okay.
I haven't seen him in a few years.
Stand behind your mom.
I don't want anything else. I get water. Thank you. Their kids' names are right. That's old. You think 88 is old?
No. I'm especially not expecting a call of anything
You want to
for
hear
an 88-year-old.
a funny story? I was on a cruise ship with my dad. We had our aircraft here. 6 bypasses. 60. 60. We fought back to the Gulf. They do a big dinner and like this on the ship. And that night we just
When you were living in Wellington?
yeah, we were on the ship.
Because we were talking. I was living in Boca.
Oh, right.
Get to-
Friends, once again, everybody's welcome to join us under the canopy. In just a few moments, we will begin the service for Mr. Joel Robert Cohen. Just another gentle reminder, if anybody happens to have a cell phone on, please take a moment to turn it on silent. On behalf of the family, I'd like to thank all those who are here in person, but as well those who are joining us on the live stream. Officiating our service here today is Chazan Stephen Storr of Congregation Beth Shalom.
What do you need to see?
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be directing our discussion and talking to the family in this direction, if you would.
One came to
Don't sit down yet, Larry.
There's 2 more chairs back here as well, too.
Yeah, house.
Just be careful. I know what you're gonna do.
Yeah.
You go around this
Oh,
way.
this is a live stream, sir.
Yeah, it's okay.
Is there? It's working.
Right, it's new. It's new. It's a long-term care facility. It used to be a Winchester House. Then we closed Winchester House.
Friend, just as another announcement before we start, I have plenty of water. Please take some. It is very hot, and you will need water. So we have water available on both sides. If anybody needs, just let us know.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have done three things thus far. One is we've escorted Joel to his resting place. 2 is that I cut Kriya with Rhonda and Larry, little ribbon that they wear. It's just a replacement of tearing at their shirt or expressing themselves in an outward manner to reflect what they're feeling on the inside. Something's lost, something's incomplete, something's torn. But they did say a blessing and said, "Thank you, God. You are the judge of this world. And though we have issues at times with the judgments in your life, your rulings, we hold on to our faith and we continue to move forward." And then, as you saw behind me, I put some earth on top of the casket. It is actually earth that is imported from the land of Israel, from Har HaZeitim, the Mount of Olives, which is a very sacred burial site. And in this way, we can connect Joel through prayer and through words to our people, to our faith, to your family's heritage. But we've also connected him to the land of Israel, which I understand he visited for an overextended stay years ago when he enjoyed his time in the land of Israel. So it connects him as well to the eternity of our people. Vayoshav ha'afar al ha'aretz keshahaya v'haruach tashuv el ha'elohim asher netana. These are the words of our tradition. The dust returns to the earth, but we believe that the spirit can return back to God. May it be that Joel's soul be bound up in the bonds of life eternal, and that God send you comfort. I'm going to recite a longer passage at this time, which reflects the blessing that the two of you said when you cut the ribbon. It talks about God's majesty and God's rule over our earth. So being that it's a little difficult to comprehend, I would simply ask you to reflect on your own thoughts and prayers, and the prayers that you would like to shower Joel's spirit with. Hatzur tamim polo ki chod rachav mishpat el emunah v'yeinav el tzadik v'yasharhu. Hatzur tamim b'chol po'al miyom alamat tifala shalit v'mat v'ma'al memit v'mechayem erod shel v'yah. Tzadik b'chod rachav hatzur tamim erachav payam alei rachamim chamalna v'chusn lavot v'adnim ki lecha donas lichot v'rachamim. Adam ben Shnai Elov Shanim Yechye Mayitron Lo Klo Yehye Baruch Dayan Emet Memit Mechaye Yadan Ornai Ki Tzarech Mishpatecha Titztach B'Davrech V'Tizke B'Shovtecha Ve'elaha Herer Chan Midad Shovtecha Tzadika Tarana V'Yashar Mishpatecha Gedol Eitzav Rav Halaliyah Shernek B'Kuchot Dal Kodar Chevene Adam Lated Lish Kidrecha V'Chefrim Alalav Lagid Ki Asher Adonai Tzuri V'Lov Latabo Adonai Natan v'Adonai Lakach Yishem Adonai Mevorach V'Hurachum Yechaper Avam V'Lo Yashchit V'Hir Bala Shiva Po V'Lo Ya'ir Kol Chamato. Just a very brief translation of those words. We're immortal to live a single year or be blessed with 1,000 years. Time's just never enough when it's somebody that you love. But we have praised you, God, as the judge of truth, who has taken this life, received his soul, but was also the creator of this life. We place our trust in your righteousness, accept our lot and our loss, and we shall do all that we can to hold on to the love that remains within us. We pray once again, God, to have mercy upon this family and to strengthen them at this time of sorrow. If you did offer prayers of your own in those last couple of moments, I'd like to ask you now to offer a communal prayer together. If you would take the pamphlets that the chapel has provided for you, we can read the 23rd Psalm in English. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, and my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house. I'll chant briefly in the Hebrew the same psalm. Mizmor leDavid Adonai roi lo echsar benotei sheyarbitzeni al mei menuchot yenahaleni. Nafshi yeshovev yancheni v'maglei tzedek leman shemo. Kam ki eilech b'geit samav et lo irara ki ata imadi. Shivtecha mishantecha hema yenachamuni. Tarok lefonei shulchan neged sorerai dishantav Hashem en roshi kosi revayai. Aktov chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai v'shavti b'veit Adonai liorech yamim. One of the great teachers of our tradition, Ecclesiastes, writes these words. Some of us will remember them from a popular song back in the 60s. To everything, turn, turn, turn. A season is set for everything, a time for every experience under the heavens, a time to dance and a time to cry, a time for birth and a time to die, a time to speak out and a time to sit and ponder our thoughts, a time to plant, a time to harvest, a time for war, a time for peace. There is a season for every experience. This is a time of mourning for your family, which is complex, because Joel didn't need, if you will, to die. He shouldn't have died at this younger age. And yet there are certain things you can do and certain things you can't do. And I hope that you, his family, have peace of mind, knowing you tried everything and you gave him your all and you loved him completely. And I hope that that will assist you in your mourning, that as he is laid to rest in peace, that you are granted peace as well. I must admit that I'm not a fan of sci-fi. Joel was. And I'm not a lepidopterist, and though today I wear a butterfly pin on my tie. The only reason I'm wearing a tie is because I needed to have a place to wear the butterfly. And Larry gave me permission now to unloosen. I've never been scuba diving nor fished for muskie. And I can't tell the difference between a tropical neon tetra, a Siamese fighting fish, a leopard cory catfish, or a gefilte fish, for that matter. So why then am I here speaking out about a man who reveled in each of these categories? I'm here to pay tribute to a man who I was introduced to just yesterday. A man whose family offered such descriptive images of this gentle giant that I was immediately enamored by him. I was assured by family that he had that effect on everyone who met him. Everyone who came to know Joel, you said, was drawn to him and genuinely liked him. He wasn't your average Joe or Joel, for that matter. He mirrored the famed poem of Robert Frost, which reads, "Two roads diverged in the woods, and I took the one less traveled by." He was a man who marched to his own drum, was a man who needed to stand on his own 2 feet. You said he didn't even like team sports because he prided himself and others on independence. The family said he was often the last one standing when it came to family gatherings and parties. And so often at family picnics, Joel was the one standing over the grill and making great barbecue or burgers or hot dogs, whatever he may have been cooking up. And he fed everybody over these last decade or 2 decades at these events. It's not a shock, however, that he knew a few things about hot dogs because he worked with his dad while they owned Kingsway Inn. I hear he also grilled a superb skirt steak, a true carnivore that he was. Though I have told that he did also walk another divergent path to the Chinese restaurant now and again as well. Joel, I was told, seemed to shadow his father in his lifetime in various times. He worked with him at the Mason Company where they would manage construction. His father's parental role in his life was quite deep, and Joel pledged to himself that someday he would, if he needed to, he would take care of his father until his final days, and that he did. When his father did pass, it was, the family agreed, one of the hardest days of his life. Another such day that seemed to be Joel's, let's say, kryptonite was when the pet shop that he worked in recently had closed. And though you told me that Joel loved dogs, labeling him a dog whisperer, this specific job was about his love about fish. It wasn't only the loss of the job that depleted Joel, but it was his innate love to be around animals, wildlife. And when he realized he would be void of his daily interaction with the fish and managing the tanks that he did so expertly, he began to retreat from seeking out new outlets for his happiness. He did have so much happiness, though, in the life before and recently as well. He grew up a beloved son of Mayor and Florence. He shared life with his brother Larry, and then Deb and Rhonda and Sam. He would become a most proud uncle of Aaron and Michael, Leah and Jordan, Joshua and Ilana, Marley, Garrett, and then had additional blessings to know the next generation of Elle and Frankie and Shira. In Hebrew, the word for uncle is dod, which means the beloved one. And Joel, to his nieces and nephews, was beloved, and he was fun, and he was the one that anyone could turn to at any time for a favor, maybe as driving you somewhere, picking you up from an airport, doing anything that you might need. You knew you could count on Joel. While to others he might appear intimidating or a big daunting figure, Joel was, as the saying goes, all of that. He was all of that in a bag of chips, or maybe a can of beans. He was known to be helpful to nearly everyone, and his love for extended family was unlimited. He would enjoy the multiple opportunities to spend time with all of you as extended family at picnics and birthdays and holidays, and other times at his Bubby's house with cousins with whom he was so close. Growing up, Joel was, you said, a stubborn young boy, and he never quite outgrew it, his siblings agreed. A young man who would wander off when the family was, he would wander off when with family and never quite stick to the rules. One time on a family vacation, you told me he was wandering off, and that left him behind at a fruit stand when his grandfather thought Joel had gotten into the car, only to find out miles away that he hadn't. You shared that once Joel went to Israel for a 2-week trip, returning home 8 months later. But when you couldn't find Joel, when young or even later in life, the basement was a good place to start looking. That was his lair. It was there that he cared for multiple fish tanks where his tropical fish would reside. As you probably know better than I, he became quite the expert in this area and found great fulfillment in being so. He likely could have found a job with National Geographic. Close friends would know of his lifetime pursuit to learn more and own more of these gill and fin adorned aquatic vertebrates. He also grew coral, Sam told me. And his fascination with fish is likely why he enjoyed scuba diving so much in Marathon at the Florida Keys. And while he'd liked to study fish, he also enjoyed fishing for a sport, notably muskies, Larry clarified. Being out and about in nature was the oasis that Joel needed at times to escape the common paths of life. His deep enjoyment of butterflies was one other divergent path he sought. Not many men his size, I imagine, are found collecting and categorizing the many unique species of butterflies that Joel did. His collection admired by many. He was meticulous in detailing, which was similar to the way he handled a previous job as a building inspector, which you told me he would do with a fine-tooth comb. Back in high school, he found another fascination, and that was photography. This led him to taking classes at Columbia College in film while he was still in high school. And then upon his graduation, he became more infatuated with that industry and attended school to earn a degree. The night owl that Joel was, always living on Joel time, as you coined it, he often found himself in discord with the rhythms of other people's lives. But nonetheless, family always set Joel a chair at the holiday table and events to be sure that if he did show up, on time or not, that he always was welcomed into the intimacy of your beautiful family circle. And there isn't anyone really closer to him, of course, than his siblings, who can speak about that intimacy, and Larry has chosen to share words with us today.
Thank you for all coming. It's, yesterday night I wrote all this, and Debbie made me rewrite it, and I even said it a couple times, and Debbie said, "Oh, that sounds good." And that's a major compliment. That's like it's being big seal approval. So if I have a little difficulty now, please bear with me. Joel, he's a good soul and a good heart. Our brother, look at me. Usually I'm not emotional. Okay, our brother, he always helped out. He assisted with everyone's house projects, that we all know Joel as. Cantor Storer mentioned before, he beats to his own drum. You ask him to show up at 9 a.m., he shows up at 1 o'clock. Maybe sometimes 1 in the morning. But,
It stays until
yeah, and he stays, which is okay. As mentioned before, family picnics, we call for setup at 10 a.m. He'd show up at noon, but he always showed up with the largest super soaker. We used to have squirt gun fights when we were little. Some of our aunts didn't like it, but we still did it. We had to do it. And he showed up with the super soaker and a truck full of charcoal, burgers, and hot dogs. He was the family, barbecuer. It was great. Everywhere, as mentioned, Cantor Storer mentioned, everyone enjoyed Joel's company. When Rhonda was a student at Southern University downstate, Joel drove Rhonda to school one time. I took Rhonda to school one time. I took her on the train and left her and went back home immediately. Joel stayed for weeks. Joel enjoys his time. Which, as mentioned, Joel went to Israel twice. First time he goes for a 2-week stay, and thanks to Yudah's family. He stayed, I don't know, several months. I don't know, we lost track of time. Second time he went there for Yudah and Lori's son, Oren's bar mitzvah. My dad went too, the family. I didn't because I was a workaholic. During that trip, they went on a camel excursion. The reason I mention that is because during our cousin Jacob's bar mitzvah in the States, during Jacob's picture montage, there is Joel in the montage, I don't know how many times, riding a camel in Israel. So Joel was involved with all the families that we brought together through marriage and friends. One of the best stories, again, it's kind of wild, it's all around Yudah and Lori's kids. Alone, Joel would babysit for Alone. So one time, go figure, when Lori and Yudah came home, there's Joel sleeping on the couch. Alone, he was either on the couch next to Joel, on the chair next, eating a big bag of Oreos. That's Joel. I could go on and on about Joel, about the good times, the family. But we're here to honor Joel today and celebrate his life and remember him. He's gone too soon. We will all miss him. But now, which is kind of really cool, Joel's going to be right here, and just right across the street is where our grandparents, Bubby and Pa, are, my parents, my aunts and uncles, and other family members are just a step away. And that, that's when I get kind of emotional, that they're spiritually all together, which brings, comfort to me and everyone. I was going to say something else. I'm not going to ad-lib. Okay, so thank you. I can't, there's a lot I want to say, but it just can't come out right now. But later tonight and tomorrow, when we're sitting Shiva, we could all talk about Joel. And if you don't show up on time today or tomorrow, don't worry. And, that's what I want to ad-lib. As I was getting ready today, brown shoes, blue shoes, black shoes, what shoes do I wear, Debbie? Debbie mentioned, Joel would wear his Hawaiian shirt and cowboy hat. So that's what I'm wearing later today and tomorrow. Even though I'm the standard family member. I'd wear what was thought to be the proper, but Joel beat to his own drum, and that's why we all loved him. Thank you.
We celebrate. Oh, lovely.
Hi, I'm Leah. Thank you. Joel is my uncle, and on behalf of all the nieces and nephews, I wanted to say a couple memories of Joel. Sorry. Joel was a big kid at heart. I know this because he had the largest super soaker at all the picnics. And he would take joy in when us kids would run past him with our water balloons. He would shoot all of us as we were running. When we were kids, Joel would like to pick us up in the big red construction truck, and we loved it because there wasn't really a passenger seat and the doors were always open. Joel would also babysit us from time to time, and we'd go on adventures with him. Like one time, Josh and I were in our PJs. It was about 10 o'clock at night, and he took us to California Pizza Kitchen. Joel had a big heart. His signature was to send us baked beans for significant times in our lives. He sent Josh baked beans on his way to Charlotte when he moved. When we got married, he sent baked beans. And he sent me baked beans when I gave birth to Frankie last year. And last year, it's actually a year ago this week that I had Frankie and I was in the hospital. And Joel was one of the first person to call me. Joel and I would talk, and it would go rambling on for over an hour. And sometimes he'd call me when I was working, and I'd be chit-chatting with Joel, my dad knows, and it would go on, and Joel, I have a meeting that I have to get to, and he's like, oh, and then he'd tell me something else. So I'm really gonna miss our conversations. Love you.
We celebrate Joel's life today. And he may have been imperfect, timing-wise and other things in his own ways, but he was perfectly imperfect for you. He was a guy each of you knew that you could count on if you needed someone to have your back and to love you no matter what. And though he suffered in a certain way during his lifetime with some headaches and other issues, I hope that the joy he brought into your lives and the bond that you shared will be enduring images blazed into your mind as boldly as one of his Hawaiian shirts. And now as his soul ascends and treks through the stars into the heavens, and he now boldly goes where no man has gone before, that you will think of him when you see a speck of celestial dust twinkling at you from the sky. And just as the aroma of his famed Yom Kippur breakfast chili will continue to waft its way through the memory of your olfactory senses, I also pray that the delight of his presence in your lives will continue to ruminate in your hearts and minds forever as well. If you'll stand, I'll offer a memorial prayer, and then if you have your pamphlets, specifically the family, we'll recite the Kaddish prayer as well. El Malera רחמים, שוכן במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה, תחת כנפי השכינה. במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים, את נשמת יהודה בן מאיר הכהן ופגל, שלח לי עולמו בגן עדן תהא מנוחתו. אנא בוא לרחמים אשתרהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו ונאמר Amen. Join me if you would in Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah v'alma divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayei chon v'yomei chon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach la'alam u'la'almei almaya yiparach v'yipa'ar v'yitumam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei dikudsha b'rechu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran ba'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama Rabbah min shmaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. As the gentlemen behind me begin to take on the holy and sacred task of laying Joel gently into his final resting place, I ask you to join me in the final verse of the Mourner's Kaddish. You should know Mourner's Kaddish makes no mention of death or sadness at all. It's just a declaration of God's miraculous and mystical existence and our miraculous existence here on this floating planet. And even though it seems all that simple, it's just exist on this planet for as long as we live, we know that the world is much more complex. So it's always an appropriate time for a prayer for peace. Oseh shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. May God offer peace to Joel's soul as he ascends, so as to be embraced by family that have gone before him. May he rest peacefully in your memories and your hearts and your minds. May God shower this world with a little bit more peace. And let us say amen. A lot more peace. I accept the addendum to my statement. When the gentlemen are completed with this first part of their task, they're going to bring over the vault cover to secure the casket into its resting place. After that, we have an opportunity to perform a mitzvah, a great act. and that is to put some earth on top of the vault cover as a gesture of love. Some people find that difficult. They feel like they're throwing dirt on somebody. I want to massage that thought and say you're actually placing a blanket of God's earth on top of Joel's casket to tuck him in to his final resting place. A gentle and a kind gesture. What we'd like you to do is to do it 3 times. That's part of our tradition. We do something 3 times to show our intention. Something isn't done casually or by an accident. It's 3 times we do it on something is intentional. We pray 3 times a day. We say Kol Nidre 3 times. People that light Shabbat candles often wave their hands 3 times over the candles. If I hurt somebody's feelings, I am mandated by Jewish law until they forgive me to ask them for forgiveness 3 different times. It's a very intentional act. And this is a sacred act, the final physical act, really, that you will do for Joel in your lifetime. You might give charity, you might think of him, you might have a family gathering in his memory, but physically, this is the one final thing that you can do for him. So come forward, pick up these smaller, there's usually 2 of them, maybe there are. Oh, there are 2. There's small little troughs, small little shovels of sand or earth that you can throw on. Sometimes we bring the larger container of earth, put it on the ground, and people use a larger shovel. It's the same exact gesture of laying some earth upon him to tuck him into his bed. We just thought with the heat and it'd be quicker and easier to allow you to do this mitzvah and then either go back to your car if you wish or come back under the shade if you can find it and observe the entire coverage until its very end. You will know, of course, that the staff here at Shalom and from Chicago Jewish Funerals and I will be here until the very end, so you have peace of mind knowing it will be done perfectly should you choose to take your leave and return back to the Shiva house. Okay? Once you do participate in the shoveling, I ask you to move away from the grave so that there's not any accidental, oops, sorry, bumping. Things have happened before that are unfortunate with slight little accidents around the grave, so please just move back away from it. And if you want to socialize with anybody that you're here seeing for the first time in a while, I ask you to walk off to the roadway, not do so around the area of the grave. That's specifically to honor Joel today. So now that the gentlemen have completed their task, the pails will be situated where you can easily access them, and we'll invite the immediate family, of course, first to participate in this mitzvah. We're going to let them move the rails in just a second, okay? You're good right there.
As Chazan mentioned, the family will be sitting Shiva following the interment at the Levy residence, 8823 Kenton, this evening until 9 p.m., as well as tomorrow, 6 to 9 p.m. Memorial contributions in Joel's memory can be made to the Ark. That information is available on a service folder that you may have received on the way into the cemetery this morning. If you have not received one, we have more over here. And for those of you who are watching online, once again, thank you on behalf of the family. That information and that link should be on the website as well, ChicagoJewishFunerals.com. Thank you so much. Just one other announcement. If anybody did not have a chance to sign the register book, just behind the hearse, we have the register book out. For those who have not had a chance, you could please sign in after you've placed several measures of earth into the grave. Thank you.